All right, Ariel, welcome. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm excited.
Yeah. So you have had a lot of success on Instagram. You joined the Reels membership in July of 2023, and by July of 2024, you had grown from like 1,000 followers to 50,000 followers. And so I'm really excited to dive in today's episode and just learn a little bit from you about how you did that, what worked, the impact that had on your business.
Yeah, thank you. I want to say thank you just from the beginning about the Reels membership because it did. I was on Instagram for about a year and a half before I joined the Reels membership and kind of developed the strategy and kind of did that growth.
Awesome. So take us back and tell us a little bit about like why you got on Instagram, who you were hoping to help in your practice, what that kind of looked like in the early stages.
Yeah, so I started my Instagram when I was in graduate school and kind of didn't have a strategy, just kind of made content as I kind of thought of it. Um, and of course, I like looking back, I remember like professors kind of like saying like, oh, like kind of professional ethics, like leading with that, um, and them kind of saying like it's not a great idea or kind of cautious against it. So I think I didn't kind of like dive right into it, and like I was always kind of one step in, one step out. And then I started my private practice in 2022, and I started just trying to post more consistently, still kind of feeling uncomfortable being in front of the camera, not knowing like what to post. And I found you and the Reels membership, and I just thought it was like in that first year of starting a private practice, like it was just such like an affordable option that's kind of like what led me there. And then just having those prompts helped me like kind of push myself and like get out there and get comfortable. And then I think I told you in like our pre like forum that sometimes I use the prompts now and sometimes I don't, but it was like that first year of like just kind of giving me those ideas and helping me get comfortable. And then kind of using it to kind of further niche down and really like doubling down on kind of educational content or learning more about like the people that were finding me, what they were hoping to get out of it.
Yeah. So let's go back in time a little bit because I hear actually from a lot of grad students who will DM me and they're like, I love your Instagram, or I love the podcast. And they're kind of nervous about whether or not they can start posting on Instagram as a grad student, if it's too early, if they're allowed to like even do it before they're a licensed therapist. What made you want to start your Instagram so early in grad school?
I think this happens a lot the more I meet other therapists. Like they're kind of going through their own healing journey or they have their own story or kind of what made them want to be a therapist. So for me, kind of starting my Instagram was a great way to kind of just say, like, hey, these are my experiences and this is what I'm learning and this is who I'm trying to help, and then meeting other people that have gone through similar situations. So I think the just bringing my real life experience and being able to share like my real life appropriately, but just kind of connecting with how they always like I had a professor that said like you are your target market. Like if you're like feel connected to them, there's a reason, and just showing up. And it's almost been like healing personally, just kind of showing up and taking up space and then realizing other people like you're not too much. People are like resonating with it.
Yeah, I love that so much. And, for any grad students listening to this, I always say Instagram is not therapy. You should not be doing therapy on Instagram. So there's no reason why Instagram is reserved only for people who've graduated or people who've gotten their license, right? Like you are 100% allowed to share at any stage in your journey. And I think it's a combination of, sort of that personal content, that really like validating and affirming content, maybe some psychoeducational content, but none of it is therapy. So none of it has to wait till you're licensed or anything like that.
100%. And I think the education, so many people I'll find like they start with the education piece, it resonates, and then it's kind of like the catalyst for them to find a therapist that they connect with.
For sure. So tell us a little bit about your niche, where folks can find you, who you kind of help on Instagram.
Yeah, so my focus is cycle breaking moms. I'm based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. So I see people statewide, and then I started parent coaching for the rest of different states as I grew on Instagram, for those that like don't need one-on-one therapy. So I focus on people that are kind of reparenting and parenting at the same time. A lot of my clients are processing emotional abuse, emotionally immature parents, or neurodivergence, and just kind of showing up like a lot of elder millennials, I think, parenting in a different way than how they were parented.
Yep. And when you started your Instagram page, Wild Wise Counseling, was that your niche from the start, or did you sort of like evolve and kind of grow into that niche?
I definitely evolved. I took some somatic and like holistic kind of therapy trainings during grad school. So somatic therapy was kind of my niche in the beginning, and then it just kind of evolved to cycle breakers and kind of narcissistic emotional abuse.
Mm-hmm. What was it like for you to sort of shift your niche as your own like interest and expertise sort of changed and shifted?
So actually, I've had to ground myself because I've noticed that some content kind of performs better on Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not necessarily where I want my whole niche to go. So, kind
Okay.
of like learning to kind of delve in. You know how I've heard people say this, but you have to kind of disengage from like it's not all about likes or like those kind of metrics. Like you
Yep.
have to be grounded in who you are, the community, kind of trust that the community will come. So my niche kind of gradually just changed as I started seeing clients more. Um, and then in last year, when I started posting about emotional abuse and narcissistic abuse, that started getting like definitely that kind of big, like kind of flow of followers.
Yep. So that was sort of like a messaging piece that really took off for you and helped with that jump to 50K. Yeah. Is that like a niche that you feel currently passionate about helping, or is that where you're kind of like, it's performing well, but maybe it's not like exactly what I want to be known for?
So a little bit in between. Like
Yeah.
definitely there's so many mothers that have experienced emotional abuse and narcissistic abuse. So it's definitely resonates. They what's happening, and it's funny how professional and personal life kind of echo is they're it's the emotional abuse, like living with after emotional abuse. So like that
Yeah.
dysregulation, that neurodivergence that might be popping up, like all those complex trauma kind of symptoms and how it's affecting your life. So just kind of, I'm starting to kind of focus more on like the day to day life of it versus I think before I was focusing more broadly on emotional abuse and narcissism.
Hmm. I wonder if maybe part of why that's doing so well previously is not just because like emotional abuse or narcissistic abuse is like the hot topic, but more so that it's like that's the piece that people are afraid to talk about or like haven't put words to before. And if that's kind of like the spicier content where you're really taking a stand and saying something that people are like, I didn't know that was me, you know?
I forget if I still have it in my bio, but one of my taglines used to be like talking about the kind of abuse that your parents swear doesn't exist. Like
Yeah.
this kind of stuff that parents are like, this is just how it is. Like I did these things and we're just kind of like reflecting on it and just kind of resonating like, well, reflecting on it.
Yeah. I find that it's more so like this spice level of content than necessarily like the specific niche that can really have a huge impact on like the amount of views and virality that content gets.
Yeah, definitely. And so it's important, at least to me, to kind of mix into that. Like there's so much effort that you put into your content that you want to make sure that you're like connecting with the right people.
Yep, for sure. What was it like for you to kind of go from 1,000 to 50,000 views in less than a year, or followers, not even views?
I mean, it was exciting. like, um, it was, of course, like those kind of with any positive kind of people coming saying like they resonate with the content, like they, like you said before, like they've never talked about this or they've never, that's just kind of the norm in their family system. And like, hey, this happened. I never really thought of it like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was huge. And it felt good. Of course, there's other, like you get more like hate comments or just people that feel triggered or kind of project like their stuff on your content. And that's always tricky. But I think it's just, if anything, I learned like the discipline of it, just kind of making it a habit to show up on Instagram, being kind of vocal, like, hey, I posted about this and this really like brought up a lot of stuff for these older parents usually or other stuff. And like using both the positive and the negative comments for future content, for processing, just for like connection.
Yeah. Were you doing that sort of processing like in stories, or were you also using that to kind of like build on each other with future reels or in feed content?
A little bit of both. I started posting definitely in stories, but um, I mean, some of it was like triggering, or a few different reels. Like people were explaining their story in comments, and then people were kind of like bullying them and like saying like that's untrue. And so like that's like a whole new world to like.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to create content. It's another thing to like make sure this community that you built is like safe and not getting like attacked online. Um, so I think a little bit of both.
Yeah. Did you feel sort of like pressure or desire to kind of moderate those comments and like police the interactions that were happening there?
There was a few times, I mean, not originally, because I mean, when you get so many comments like on a certain thing, it's hard to keep up with all of them. But then I did get a few messages like, hey, this person's like really going at it in comments. And like, I just kind of apologized. And obviously, that's not like what you want on anybody's content, and just kind of deleted it and blocked it. And I think I made a thing in stories, again, kind of processing it out loud, like, hey, if you see this and you feel inclined, please let me know and I'll take care of it.
Totally. Yeah. I've been in that situation before too. It doesn't happen often, but where something goes like super viral and you're just like, there's no way I can even keep up with these comments. And you'll have like one or two trolls who's like replying to everybody. And it's like, stop harassing people. Just like say something mean to me and move on. You don't need to like also get into it with everybody in the comments.
That's exactly how I felt. And people were like, I mean, people are talking about trauma. Like, it's not how, I don't know, people have a lot of time on their hands.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned like kind of building discipline and being consistent. I'm curious what that consistency looked like for you in that really big year of growth.
Yeah, for sure. So I think having the Reels membership that year before just helped me kind of show up every day in stories and have content. And then that in 2024, I made it a goal to post like twice a day, most days, and then in stories show up. And so I think that helped just kind of project it. And I've never been great at like batching content. But in the morning, I would try to at least get that day's worth of content kind of ready and scheduled, at least the caption. So everything was like ready to go.
Yep.
And so I think just having that and having it part of my routine just helped kind of, so I didn't forget, or so the day didn't get away from me. And I think it also helped people feel kind of trust and safety in it, that I was going to show up every day and that there was content that they could either learn from or.
I love that. I kind of want to go a little bit deeper here because I think that this is so important. Like oftentimes people hear, okay, she went from 1 to 50,000 followers in a year. I want that. And then when we dig a little bit deeper, or even like, I want that, what am I doing wrong? Why isn't that happening for me? Right. And then when we dig a little bit deeper, it's like they're posting 2 or 3 times a week. They're not really showing up in stories. And you're out here posting twice a day, showing up in stories. And I know you became a mom of 5 in 2024 as well. So how did you decide that Instagram was going to be like a top priority for you? How did you sort of like find the time to make that a priority?
So one, like before I even had 1,000 followers, once I think I had like 400 or something around there when I started the Reels membership. And I'm not even joking, within like 2 or 3 months of posting consistently, I was getting clients from it. And so I was filling my private practice, self-pay. And it was worth with less than 1,000 followers. And I was on a few like community kind of organizations too. But they were mostly finding me from Instagram. And so kind of seeing that it was working, it kind of, I mean, I was such a naysayer before, I swear. I was like, oh, they have, you just see everybody else's, what they have. But once I really did that discipline piece, and I think I mentioned this too, like the community piece of the Reels membership, like the people that are on, like kind of joined around the same time that I joined, and we kind of formed a community and started talking, like their content still pops up on mine, and like we still talk, and we've done like collaboration and all that stuff. And so I think that the combination of the discipline and the community started helping me like kind of see like my fruits were actually like becoming something.
Yeah. And so that was sort of like the motivator to continue and to go all in and remain consistent. How long does it take you to, in the morning, plan 2 posts for the day?
Um, I mean, it depends. Like, so I have 5 kids. So as long as like nobody's waking up, say like an hour.
Okay.
And I'm like, I try to do some talking heads, but it's mostly B roll and information. And so an hour of like captions and just kind of like creating those kind of.
Yep. And when you sit down to spend that hour creating content, I know you said you don't like to batch, but have you done any sort of like pre work at that point of like, okay, here's generally what I want to talk about for, my 10 to 15 posts this week? Or other than from like the Reels membership, are you like, I have somewhere that I'm pulling these ideas from? Or are you kind of like staring at a blank page and starting fresh every morning?
I'm not staring at a blank page. Sometimes I will kind of go through the comments of what I have too. If I had like a high performing reel and kind of in my notes app, just kind of making bullet points, or if I see something in like a book or hear a news thing, kind of that kind of stuff. So, kind of an idea brain dump, if you
Yeah.
will, and then taking that and kind of diving deeper.
I love that. You mentioned using comments as like post inspiration and the news. Tell me a little bit more about that, like where you kind of come up with ideas or even like just concepts that you're wanting to talk about, even if it's not like a fleshed out idea for a post.
Yeah. So I think the comments are probably huge. Like people are kind of explaining their pain points or what resonates, what doesn't. So, I mean, obviously, like confidential, nothing specific, but just kind of jotting down like these themes. Because a lot of people, I mean, sometimes I even see it and I'm like, oh, yeah, like I've had that experience. And kind of pulling from, what you learn as a therapist, like your personal experience, other people's stories, um, and things that kind of, I think the longer I'm a therapist, the more I'm realizing like how many similarities there are in like the human experience, and just leading with that connection of like, hey, I've had this experience too. Like, here's the knowledge I know about it, kind of combining all that.
Yep. One tip for people who maybe don't get a lot of comments or their comments are like other sort of like supportive therapists versus people in it is you can always look at like other creators in similar niches who are getting a lot of comments on their page, right? I actually love going to TikTok for that because I feel like people in the comments are so chatty over there. And just kind of like searching for things, especially when I'm doing like a funny B-roll type of thing. I'll like search whatever, like panic attack tip, and like try and read the comments and be like, okay, what are people saying? How are they describing this? What's like a funny little joke they're making about their panic attacks? And can just sort of like plug it in. And I think that that can be really helpful, like market research if your own community hasn't really popped yet.
Yeah, I love that. And I will say, like, back to that time when I was posting twice a day, I was doing that kind of right before I was posting a reel, is going into like accounts that were a little bit bigger than mine, and commenting on their stuff just to kind of put my name kind of out there, and again, build community. Like if they asked a question and the account is too big, like to kind of answer it if I could.
Very cool. And so you went on maternity leave in that year. Did you kind of keep up with this consistent posting schedule during that time, or what did that look like for you?
Yeah, so I let maternity leave kind of be intentional. I did have some kind of static post batch that I did before, but I wasn't going to do twice a day on maternity leave or schedule it. And I actually had a wait list. I took maternity leave for 2 months, and I was getting inquiries just from kind of popping on stories or throwing in something when I had it. And so I mean, even still, I'm starting to build back that consistency and go back to work full time. But I did kind of like a part time kind of ease in period this first year. And it's been cool to see how like that community kind of like supported itself.
Yeah. I think what's really cool too is like you laid such a good foundation that now you don't need to be like 100% on, 100% in it in order to like maintain that and keep seeing those results. Yeah, I definitely saw similar with my like Sit with Kelly page. When I first started, I posted daily for probably the first year and a half. And then I decided to start my second page, Business of Therapy. And by that point, I already had more than like 50,000 followers on Sit with Kelly. I was like, okay, this page is like good. I don't need more followers here. I just kind of want to like maintain it, maintain the sense of community. I wasn't taking new therapy clients at that time. So I was kind of just like, I don't know what I want to do here. Like maybe brand deals, just kind of hanging out. And so now I only post like 3 times a week there, but I get like great engagement still. I still get brand deals over there and stuff. I know if I had a therapy client opening, like I could easily get a client. And so it's nice to be like, I put in the hard work and now I can kind of take my foot off the gas, versus like it has to always be 100% full steam ahead, always.
Exactly. And I think I didn't realize that like when I was posting twice a day, I felt like I would always have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And just being able to kind of, again, like social media is never going to tell you to set up better boundaries. Like
Yep.
maternity leave was like that good push of like, okay, like you would rather be hanging out with your baby than being on social media, and just like giving you that boundary kind of inspiration.
Yep. And it sounds like you sort of gave yourself permission for the times when that wasn't true, maybe, right? Where you were like, I'm actually wanting to show up in stories or I'm wanting to make a post, that you weren't like, I have to be offline, but there was no like pressure or goal or like thing that you had to check off and kind of do it for.
Yeah, I think the longer I do this, the more the focus is on connection and just kind of like popping in and seeing that community.
Tell me how you kind of like view that connection and community piece on social media.
Yeah, so I feel like it's actually grown. Like I've kind of seen it before. I wasn't really sure if community and social media kind of could coexist. I thought it was just kind of like a word that people could have said. But people, like I try not to, people can message me, but I kind of direct them to finding their own therapist, or will give resources that kind of, um, Instagram's not a replacement for therapy. But I think it helps people feel comfortable, like when they see you showing up, even if it's not twice a day, like even if it's daily or a few times a week, they see your face, they see you talking about things. Um, and it seems silly, but like for these things that people never talked about or feel uncomfortable sharing, it helps build trust and safety. Um, and especially in like my first niche with somatic therapy, like safety and like comfort is like the beginning stage of like any type of healing. And so, um, not that, I mean, social media is like a wild world, but I think it really could build like safety and trust with the right people. And so I feel like that piece, and then just connecting with people as they comment or kind of engage in stories.
Yep. And when you say like connecting with people, is that like in DMs or kind of like maybe the more passive interactions of like you putting up a question box, but not like engaging with them directly? Is it mostly therapists? Like who's sort of that group that you're building that connection and community with?
Yeah, so a little bit of both. Like therapists, definitely. That kind of, there's like a small circle of people I think that I joined, like just kind of building each other up in that beginning. People in DMs, and then probably recently I've been doing stories more, just to kind of that passive of like, hey, I'm still here. What's up with you? Kind of thing, like checking in with people.
For sure. What are your goals with Instagram right now? Like, is the goal to kind of get more clients or to grow your following, or what are you hoping to kind of get out of it at this stage in your business?
Yeah, so right now I'm not accepting new therapy clients. Um, I've been, I just finished my spring group, so in the fall I'll start another group and hope to fill that with Instagram. Um, and then my next stage is trying to do like different brand partnerships, or I have some like kind of projects started, like workbooks or different things that people have asked for support on, that I started crafting, and I just need to like kind of finish and put together and all that.
It's cool that you're kind of like at the point where your one-on-one caseload is stable, right? And we're working on like the more scalable offers, like the group programs, the digital products, the brand deals, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's been cool. Focus, like when people do DM and we kind of talk about like, okay, like just kind of expanding more about what is helpful, whether it's a workbook, a group, or kind of group. Um, people have experiences with these different things, and they do want to share like what's helpful, what's not, I feel like.
Yeah. When you started your Instagram, did you have goals of like eventually kind of doing more scalable offers, or were you kind of like, I just want to get some clients and like kind of see what happens?
I don't know. I think, I mean, I always remember seeing other people have kind of partnerships and things and thinking it was cool, but just kind of it feeling really out of reach.
Yeah.
And so I guess like now it definitely feels more in reach. I have that on my goal board for this year, is to do like a brand partnership. But the scalable options was actually really cool when I started growing and more people from out of state started like kind of reaching out and thinking of like, okay, how could I help serve other people?
Mm-hmm. Have you mostly filled those groups with clients from Instagram or?
Yes. So I've kept it support based in general. So kind of encouraging, like, if you need one on one therapy, like, this isn't the right spot, but for support and community. And they've all been from Instagram.
Very cool. Can you tell us a little bit more about those offers?
Yeah. So I have a group called Reparenting While Parenting, for people that are kind of in the throes of parenting. And really, what happens a lot with parents is they kind of think they healed their trauma or kind of like good, and then their kids come along and different stages kind of trigger different things, whether it's like emotional dysregulation or neurodivergence or discipline. And they realize like, hey, I might not want to parent exactly how I was parented. So kind of learning more of that psychoeducational on how to regulate your emotions, how to trust like your intuition, how to kind of set better boundaries with your own parents if you have like emotionally immature parents or parents that kind of want to always give advice. So Reparenting While Parenting is my bigger group. And then I just started a Moms of Neurodivergent Kiddo group, for moms that are supporting neurodivergent kids and some kind of late stage neurodivergence themselves.
Yep. And both of those are like live coaching groups, is that right? Are there any like pre-recorded aspects to it, or is it like you're kind of doing these live group calls? What does that look like?
Yeah, so for the Reparenting While Parenting, I have kind of a workbook and a video that kind of goes out just kind of explaining what we're doing and some reflections. So this way we kind of get some kind of, you start that reflection process before our live calls. And then it's they're both closed 8-week groups. The Moms of Neurodivergent is kind of reoccurring, where the Reparenting While Parenting, we do a spring and a fall session.
Cool. And when you are launching those, how does your content strategy in terms of like reels or stories change, if at all?
It definitely does. Um, I'm not type A, and so it probably could be better. But I definitely start like kind of, I have an outline for both courses, and so I might like take some of the meat of some of the outline and integrate it into my content.
Yep. So kind of like focusing more on that messaging around like, here's what the group is about. And are you like, is your content like by the group, or is it still kind of like, maybe here's like some pain points for parents who are wanting to parent differently, and then we're selling the group a little more softly? Like, how does that kind of look?
Yeah, so definitely the second option, like kind of selling softly, talking about different pain points, or kind of feeling kind of like the end marker, like where you hope to be as a parent, and kind of more rooted, or feel more sure of yourself. So a combination of those two, and then mentioning the group. You definitely use stories more during that time when I'm kind of launching and trying to get hearing more like what they're hoping to get out of the group, what they're looking for help with. And then definitely like DMs too, if people have questions, and kind of being available for that.
Yeah. Do you sort of like, in terms of the Reels membership, shift those prompts and almost like niche down even further during those launches, or?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's always a mix, because the emotional abuse, kind of what you were saying, like the more spicy stuff kind of drives the engagement, and then people might find the Reparenting While Parenting content and resonate with it. So I kind of mix it both.
Very cool. The last thing I wanted to kind of ask you about is your decision not to like show your kid's face online. I'm curious if that was something hard for you. It's something I've been like considering myself on this becoming a parent journey, but I would love to just kind of like talk through your decision-making process there, what it was like to kind of make that shift.
Yeah, definitely. I already said it, but congratulations.
Thank
I'm excited for
you.
So like I said, like, it was showing up on social media, like especially in the beginning, it's work to kind of show up. And I had these videos of my kids, and I kind of didn't think anything of it. Like, it was mostly local at that point. So it was other therapists that, like, when I first started, I had a newborn and I would bring them along on networking meetings. And like,
Yeah.
some people knew my baby, and like, it wasn't, I didn't think anything of it. And then I had my first Bible reel, and it was like my daughter, like, just kind of, it was like just the side of her face, like jumping off something in gymnastics. And it was like 300,000 views. And I remember thinking, like, ooh, I don't like that many people seeing my daughter. Like,
Yeah.
that makes me feel uncomfortable. And I think that was before you started hearing about kind of it. I feel like it's becoming more common for people to say, like, if you're profiting off your kids, or like, people have really black and white thinking of it.
Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, I'm not like monetizing my child. It was just like a B-roll footage. But I think in this age with how technology is, it's we you never wish that you had more technology, or like, it's my choice to show up on social media. I want to wait until my child's old enough to kind of make that choice.
Yeah.
Again, like, my kids always look cuter than I do. Like, my hair is like barely washed.
Like, the engagement will be better.
Yeah. So I still do like back of the face or back of the head, or like if they're walking, like something like that, and put the text over it. But I'm just conscious not to show their face. I think I went through what I was comfortable with, kind of being okay that if somebody might not want to show any part of their kid or talk about their kid. And then some people might show everything, and I kind of root in like everything. Everybody has different options, and that's okay, but that's kind of where I landed.
Yeah. Do you do the whole like emoji thing over their face, or are you kind of conscious about like, I'm going to film a B-roll when they're looking the other way or stuff like that?
Usually B-roll the other way. Occasionally I might do the emoji or kind of like blurred face.
Yeah.
But just try to limit it.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like there's so many creative ways that you can visually show, especially if you're a therapist who works with moms, that you are a mom without having to show your kid's face. So like, and I just personally resonate, I think, more with that content than the ones with like the big emojis and stuff. I think it just feels like a little more inviting versus like, I don't want you to see my kid. You might not even notice that you don't see the kid's face. And so I think like being creative with how you're setting up the camera is great. Being creative with like the props that you use with B-roll, right? Like maybe it's tidying up your kid's bedroom or packing their backpack, or like, packing like a cute little lunchbox or something, right? Stuff that shows other parents like, I'm a parent too, without having to plaster your kid's face like all over the internet.
Exactly, 100%. And I feel like I just didn't want, it's you leading with connection. Like, I see other moms. I just didn't want them to be like front and center with it for their own like safety and privacy.
Cool. What advice do you have for therapists who maybe have been posting on Instagram for a bit, but haven't yet had something like go viral or haven't gotten a client from Instagram? What advice do you have for them to sort of like amp up the results a little bit?
I guess show up and kind of reflecting on our conversation, going through your niche and kind of picking out that like spicier or kind of headline kind of like thing that people are scared to Google, or scared like to, if anybody else experienced that. And just normalizing talking about like those bigger things.
Yeah, I love that. And I think as therapists, we have those conversations all day with our clients, right? Like, people are telling us stuff that they're too embarrassed to tell their friend or their partner or their parents or whatever. And so being willing to go there in your content is huge. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was lovely having you on the podcast. And remind folks where they can find you and follow you and connect and all the things.
So Instagram is my biggest, where I show up the most, at Wild Wise Counseling.
Cool. And we will link that in the show notes for folks too.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks. Bye.